Right, let's go back to the start. Do it properly.
Right. Here we go. Okay, I wanna apologise if anybody's waiting in the waiting room there. Welcome back to another episode of the 100k Freelancer Club podcast. I promise we are professional and I work in tech and we should know what we're doing. But for probably the 5th time in our live career, I pressed the go live button on the streaming software, but not on the YouTube side of things. Ridiculous that you have to press go live twice. Catches me out every single time. But welcome back to the 100k Freelance Club podcast. We're covering today the top skills on Upwork. So what were the most in-demand skills on Upwork in 2021? And then bonus content, we're going to go, what do we think is the top skills for 2022 and beyond? But I've already asked you this question once today, but nobody was actually there, so I'll ask it again. How are you doing today, Niall?
I was fine until about 5 minutes ago when you forgot to press go live. A schoolboy error. I can't believe you blaming YouTube as well.
It's a ridiculous system because if you have to use like OBS or Streamlabs or something, and you press go live, and then you have to press go live again on the browser side of YouTube. Ridiculous. Just stupid system. But
I'm good. To answer your question, I'm a bit tired. I had a weekend where I had a bit less work on, and I guess kind of the last few weeks and maybe months have just kind of caught up with me a little bit. I had a few drinks at the weekend, let my hair down a little bit, and didn't get too much sleep in over the 2 or 3 days of the weekend that I had. So feeling a bit tired this morning, but was back at it today. And I just think it's one of those old school freelance things of listening to your body and your brain and your mind and your body telling you that you need a break. So that would be me, I think, today. Maybe I just need a good night's kip, but yeah, I'm definitely thinking about possibly taking a break at some point in the near future, because I did feel pretty tired this morning when I rose, but I'm all good, mate. Thanks. How are you?
Do it, man. Fly out to Barcelona. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. I had a weekend away, skiing in Andorra, living that digital nomad lifestyle, living life to the full. It was a very, very good weekend, and yeah, getting back in the swing of things. You know, joining you today at a podcast on this Monday, and yeah, we just wanted to talk about, or I think I messaged you earlier in the week or a couple of days ago about this new report that Upwork have just released or released recently, which basically just shows the top skills in each category. So for those of you that don't know what Upwork is, Upwork's it's a freelance marketplace. So it's where freelancers can go to find work, and it's where employers can go to find freelancers. So somebody might go onto the site and post, I need a graphic designer to design my new logo for my new coffee shop. And then, you know, everyone with the graphic design skill on Upwork would get notified, and you can just apply, hey, you know, these are my skills, hire me. And so it is a massive, massive platform. Like, they process hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars every year in sales, if not billions. I should be more prepared on this, but it is a massive company. It's one of the biggest freelance marketplaces in the entire world. So their data is pretty much, you know, it's a good overview of the freelance market. Well, the digital freelance market. Like, so most digital freelancers will use or will have used Upwork at some point in their career. Have you ever used Upwork?
Yeah, I have. I've used Upwork more regularly a couple of years ago, really, than I do now. It's a really useful tool to kind of establish yourself a little bit in terms of picking up jobs here and there. I always found it was easier for smaller projects than bigger projects, but that's just my field of work. So what I've done is I've used it for voiceovers. I've recorded a few audiobooks, poetry. I've done some of that on Upwork. The thing is, I think that it's not often that people are looking for presenters or commentators on Upwork. It's certainly different skills that people look for. That's not to say that I haven't found it useful, particularly when it came to voiceover sort of things. So I have used it. I haven't used it particularly regularly in recent years, probably not regularly in the last 18 months, but certainly something I've got experience with and have used before. And I definitely don't think there's any harm in being on Upwork, because, you know, as we always say, when you're a freelancer, you kind of have to self-market and that is something that Upwork gives you, albeit a small one, a platform to do. So I'd definitely say that, give it a go. If you don't give it a go, you can't lose anything. You can only really gain from being on platforms like that, particularly at a certain level of freelancer. If you're just starting out, I'd definitely recommend looking into it.
Yeah, 100%. And it's something that if you don't have an existing network, like if you're just finishing university or you're not the biggest networker in the world, it's a place where you can easily outbound market, so you can reach out to people looking to hire you rather than just like trying to get people to come to you, which can be costly, and it does take quite a lot of experience to do inbound marketing. And we do actually have on Thursday this week, so if you listen to the podcast today on the 24th of January, on the 27th of January, we have a live masterclass on inbound marketing for freelancers. So this is how to get clients to come to you, and you can sign up for that for free on the 100kfreelanceclub.com website, and it's just down there on the homepage, which you can sign up for. But jumping back into this, so I'll jump in. I just want to cover Upwork's top 10 most in-demand tech skills. Now, there's some stuff on here. We get loads of questions from freelancers looking to get started, and people essentially just looking to make money online. They ask, what should I do, and what should I study, or what's a big opportunity in the market now? And by the looks of this, it just seems to be completely web development 100%. So I'll list out the top 10 for you now for everybody listening. So it's in number one position in the top in-demand tech skill of 2021 was web design. In second place was WordPress, which is basically a subcategory of web design. It's just one way you can build a website. 3 is web programming. 4, JavaScript, which is a programming languages. 5, 6, and 7 were CSS, HTML, and PHP, more web development languages. 8 was Shopify, which is an e-commerce sort of DIY platform for building e-commerce websites. And 9 is API, and 10 is graphic design. So 10, kind of 9, are the only two which aren't really very web development specific. So I was kind of surprised not to see any iOS development, Android development, any new technologies or recent technologies such as Flutter or Ionic, which are sort of new cross-platform programming languages. It seems to be really heavily web-based. In my opinion, I don't know if this is because, like you were saying earlier, Niall, Upwork is more of a place to find smaller gigs, and web development nowadays is a hell of a lot cheaper than iOS development, Android development, any of these new cross-platform programming languages like Flutter. So if you're looking for a cheaper freelancer, you'd probably be searching for this type of work on Upwork. I don't know what your thoughts about that are. Like, how do you feel about Upwork as a whole? Do you think people go there to spend the big bucks, or do you think it's more to get sort of value-based freelancing?
First of all, can I just say this is possibly the biggest humble brag we've ever had on this podcast, that you've chosen the top 10 skills of 2021 and the number one skill is one that you do. I can't believe. I don't know whether you've done that by mistake or on purpose, but fair play. Keeping that self-promotion going right through the podcast. I love it. I think for me, certainly some of the fees that I see offered out on Upwork aren't as much as I think they should be. So I think I don't want to use the term cheap labor, but that's what I'm going to say, because I think that does have an appeal, particularly to people that are trying to get freelancers at a decent rate, because we know that these websites like Upwork, and there are others in the marketplace as well, freelancer.com, people per hour, there's other ones, Juno we've spoken about as well on this podcast before. They are marketplaces, yes, but marketplaces are effectively competitive areas. So, it's no different to if you went to a market in your local town or city, there'd be more than one fruit and veg supplier, and it's up to you to choose which fruit and veg supplier you will buy from. And a lot of people will buy from the one that's cheaper, because that's how competition works in business in its most simple terms. Now, that can translate to freelancing and particularly digital freelancing platforms like Upwork.com, where you will find that people were given a score, a ranking, a rating, reliability factor, and all of these things are all elements to building a profile on Upwork and becoming a reputable freelancer on that platform. And what you'll find is that freelancers will be employed if they have a better rate or a rate that's more attractive to the person who's employing them. So I do think there's an element of that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it would be remiss of us just to sit here and gloss over the fact that there are a chunk of employers, businesses, clients looking to hire out freelancers because it's probably going to save them a bit of money. So I think that that's something to bear in mind.
Yeah, I think with Upwork as well is what I find is what you see on sort of the front cover is not what you get. So, for example, freelancers always put a massive cost per hour on their profile. So you might see somebody working in WordPress development, and on their profile it says they work for $90 an hour. On the other side of the spectrum, you got the employer, which is looking for someone to build a WordPress website, puts the bid out at $15 an hour.
Yeah.
And now then sort of people bid on it and they meet somewhere in the middle. So you can be like really surprised when you go on Upwork and there's people like, I want an Android app developed at $9 an hour.
Yeah, I mean, let's not miss this key important fact out, which is that Upwork take a slice of the money you make as commission.
Yeah,
that's
both
how
ways,
effectively that's how effectively Upwork makes its money. So when you see someone putting an advert out and they want someone to do it for $15 an hour, you don't at point of consumption as the end user or the freelancer, you don't get the $15 an hour. You get a percentage of that deducted or given to Upwork. And so actually, when you think about it like that, $15 an hour becomes $12.50 an hour, becomes $10 an hour, whatever the percentage is that Upwork take these days, which I'm not 100% sure on. Maybe we should find that out. But it certainly is
10%.
10%, right? Okay, so there we go. So if someone's doing it for $15 an hour, you actually get $13.50.
Quick maths.
But it's about the best maths I can do, to be honest. But obviously, the bigger those numbers get, the bigger the chunk of money you will be handing over. And I understand that's how the platform works, and they've been massively successful doing that. But I think we should definitely point that out, because some of those numbers and figures that you mentioned will be enough to put people off using it. That's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. It's just about the cost of marketing though, because the thing with Upwork is I think it's really, really hard to get started on these freelance marketplaces, because it's like you get a rating system, right? It's like you wouldn't go on Amazon and buy, an expensive item with no reviews. It's never been sold before by the supplier. You'd be like, no way. Yeah. It's the same when you go on Upwork, like somebody posts to say, okay, let's have a look at number 4th in the list here, a JavaScript developer. Well, they're going to post it out, and maybe 50 freelancers are going to bid to, get that job. And everyone's going to have reviews, like 5-star reviews, 90% job completion, all this, that, and the other. And if you've got 0 jobs completed, 0 money earned, and 0 reviews, you've got to do something pretty spectacular to actually land that job. So it is a really difficult place to get started, and it does scare people like away from that. But again, what the point I was actually trying to make originally is the cost of acquisition for the client. So like Upwork takes 10%. So if you work on a job and you get paid $1,000 for it, let's just say a week's work, you get paid $1,000. Upwork takes $100 of that. Well, if you weren't using Upwork, how long would it take you to get a client like that? Maybe you'd have to run Facebook advertisement or Google advertisement, or you'd have to go networking, for example. And if your hourly rate is, say, $50 an hour, and it takes you 10 hours in 1 week to go to networking events, go to meet potential clients and talk to them, that's cost you $500, So it's like you have to kind of compare like which is going to work out better for you, because on Upwork, the good thing about Upwork for me is the time to hire. I don't think there's not massive projects on Upwork where you're going to earn, $250,000 in 1 year or 50 grand from one project or whatever. But you can go on there, job for logo design, job for this, job for that, audio cover, voiceover for this, whatever it may be. You can apply for it, and 45 minutes later you could be hired. Like the time to actually employ is rapid. So it doesn't, and to submit an application might take you 20 minutes. So, you could submit, 20 in one day. So in terms of like the time it costs you, the money it costs you, I think it's quite a cheap method of client acquisition, including, that fee that they do take off of the edge there. The only problem is getting started in the jungle that is freelance marketplaces. How did you land your first freelance gig on Upwork?
I think what it was I have something slightly unique on Upwork because of my skill set, which is the fact that I've got a background rooted in broadcasting, in radio, in sport. And so, it's not often you get that sort of profile pop up. I think the profile looking professional as well, I think that helps. I think if you have a professional looking profile, they're more likely to take a chance on you. And I think actually the person that hired me for my first Upwork gig was someone who was using Upwork for only the third or fourth time. So they were in a similar position to me as someone who was hiring, that they were prepared to take a chance on someone like me who had just kind of started up a profile purely because they were in a similar boat not 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago when they were looking for people to do a specific job. So I think that certainly has a part to play in it. So that would be kind of from what I remember, my experience of using Upwork. It was actually voiceover a voiceover piece I did for an audiobook. So that was kind of how it began. Particularly when it comes to detailing what skills I had. So the fact I'm a British guy and the person was looking for a British voiceover. I was in constant liaison with the client in terms of the operating system and software. The software, effectively, what I'm trying to say is what I have on my machine is industry standard. So I use Adobe Creative Cloud. So I've got Adobe Audition, which is industry standard in our industry for recording and editing audio. So that was always a big plus. The quality was good. I have access to top class recording facilities. I have a home setup which I can use as well. This room's a little bit echoey, but at the time I was in somewhere which is far more soundproofed. So when it comes to what I was looking for, which was voiceover work, when I wasn't sort of as busy freelancing as I am now, it was a great tool to have. Mind you, I found it slightly difficult to get to grips with in terms of the amount of time needed in terms of investing in it. Whether that's because of the nature of the work I was doing, voiceovers, maybe that's sort of not conducive to Upwork as much as web development or web design might be, as you've already touched upon. But I liked what you say about, kind of boiling it down to basics. So I guess you could kind of consider Upwork as like fast food. It's quick, it's easy. You can go from front to back in 20 minutes. You can go from applying to getting the job in 20 minutes. But as much as everyone enjoys fast food, it isn't always good for you.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt personally. And obviously, these are all opinions we share on this podcast. So, fast food for me is something that I don't eat on a regular basis. If you ate fast food every day for the rest of your life, you'd soon know about it. It would have an effect on your health. There's no doubt
You'd
about
have a
that.
short life, yeah.
You'd have a pretty short life and quite a few trips to the doctor. So I think that's kind of one of those things where you have to bear it in mind. That was kind of my takeaway, and that's what I was thinking when no pun intended, and that's what I was thinking when you were talking about it. So yeah, I mean that was kind of my experience on Upwork, getting a gig for the first time. I haven't used it as regularly as a lot of people listening to this will have done, but it's something that I'm glad I did do. And there's no question that if I did get into a position where I was looking for work in a certain field and I felt that I could use Upwork effectively and proactively to get me some gigs, then I'd definitely dip back into it again. There's no question.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a completely different experience. Like, I was using freelance platforms a long time ago, like 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I was getting some really good, sort of in my early days of freelancing, some really good rates, but the competition was way lower back then. And then about 5 years ago, I think it was, I jumped in to start using Upwork and that again, just to test what it was like. like we were trialing. I think at the time you could add like an agency to Upwork as well, and I was building Ivana Designs, and it was like a client method, like a client acquisition method. And what I found was I'd pick up really small gigs, like it's something like we need a 1-page landing page for £500, like a really small web project, which would take like half a day or a day or something like that. And I'd take on that project and do it. And then what would happen was, because we'd produced essentially I'd produced such a good result, and I knew what I was talking about, and I knew how I wanted to progress the deal, I was just using Upwork to basically get my foot in the door with the client. And then once I had my foot in the door, I just built deal after deal after deal after deal. So I might get a client in for $500 and they pay me $500 through Upwork for a small thing. But now I've been working with them, I can analyze their business, okay? I can analyze all the aspects of their website, their marketing, what's wrong, what they need to be doing, deliver them reports and be like, yo, hey, I can do this for you. But I didn't end up continuing through Upwork. We just continued outside of Upwork. So I might get a $500 client or $500 gig through Upwork that ended up being 20 grand's worth of work over the course of a year because I made sure to progress that client. So even though Upwork isn't offering or wasn't offering at that time, or I wasn't able to get with the profile that I had, like the big, $100 an hour development gigs that, everybody wants to be going for, I took the smaller ones and put it on myself to make it a big deal. And you could, if you want, make it a big deal inside of Upwork and, get them to keep paying you for Upwork, and then your Upwork profile is going to grow. But that's my story of how I progressed there.
It's basically a microcosm of freelancing as a whole. No one is going to give $100,000 contract to a freelancer who's just started out. It's just not going to happen. The only way that will happen is if, you have a serious contact, or it's a little bit jobs for the boys, which sometimes it can be in the world of business. I don't want to get too political on this podcast, but our government in the UK seems to take that quite literally when it comes to jobs for the boys, when it comes to handing out contracts and stuff like that. That's another matter. But I guess it's the same thing with Upwork, isn't it? You're not going to go onto Upwork as a brand new freelancer with kind of a pretty sort of level footing when it comes to starting your profile, and then all of a sudden Microsoft are going to come knocking on your door and say, we want this person to do this. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And that's not me being unoptimistic or pessimistic. It's me being real and honest and giving my opinion. And my opinion is it's just not going to happen. Let's be realistic here. So I mean, I guess it's similar to all other types of freelancing. Is if you're a graphic designer, Coca-Cola aren't going to come to you for their next logo, or McDonald's aren't going to come to you to graphic design their next billboard ad. If you're a brand new freelancer on Upwork, it's just not going to happen. But what you might do is get what, like you said 10 years ago, or what I did when I started with my voiceover stuff, you're going to get the smaller clients that come to you, and then you build your profile like that. And that's always kind of how it works in freelancing. You always kind of start small and build bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, not everyone is like that, but I'd say a large proportion of people will start in that manner. And then you'll see that snowball effect. So
I think most people start, as you say, like they start with the really small clients and grow upwards. I think what actually separates people becoming super successful freelancers and people just floating around making 18 to 25k a year freelancing for the rest of their lives is that they don't progress. They don't let go of the smaller clients and move on to the bigger ones. They constantly get bogged down by these small clients. Feel like they owe them something.
It's a great point, that is. I think it's a really great point you make, because there is going to be a place and a moment in your freelancing career where you are going to have to drop a client. And I don't like the word drop a client, but let a client go, or there must be a nicer way of putting it, but you know what I'm saying. You need to kind of
fire the client.
Get rid, completely ditch the client.
Bin them off.
Sack them off. But you know what I'm saying. There's going to be moments where you let's face it, right? If a client is offering you $50 for a job, and then another client is offering you $250 for a job, you're going to take the job that's $250, aren't you? If you weigh all the pros and cons up, and the pros completely outweigh the cons, you're going to take the higher paid offer, aren't you? Now,
100%.
some freelancers are in a position where they can negotiate and they can kind of play two companies off of each other and say, well, this company is paying me this. I'd rather stay with you if you match their offer. You know, some people might do that, and that is absolutely fine. You can haggle in freelancing. You are your own business person. You are your own business, and you set your own rates. That is totally okay, and that is something that a lot of people listening to this will do or will have done. But also, when you're quite new to and fresh to freelancing and you're starting out, there are going to be moments where you're going to have to make a decision to drop a client because you're too busy, or you're busy working on other projects that are maybe more valuable to you, both in terms of opportunities and in terms of the remuneration at the end of it. So I think these are all things that you need to take into consideration, and it's not a nice thing to do. It's a horrible thing to do, letting a client go, and it gets
Yeah.
easier over time. I must be honest, I've found that it gets slightly easier over time, but it's not a nice thing to do, because especially when you're at the start of your freelance career and you have someone that's taken a chance on you,
And they've given you
and
the leg up.
yep, and then you have to turn around after months, years, whatever it might be, and say, I've really loved working with you, but I need to move on because I want to do this, or I'm going to move on. That's not a nice thing to do. It's a hard thing to do, because, like you say, there's that sense of loyalty there. You feel like you owe them something because they've given you a chance, and then you almost feel like you're flying in their face by turning around and saying, sorry, I don't want to do this anymore. But that is just business, and that is something that every freelancer will come across at some point on their journey. And in terms of freelancers that, you know, strive to be successful, like you say, they are going to get to a roadblock or a crossroads in their career where they go, right, okay, which direction am I going to take? And it's not an easy thing to do, but it's something that everyone will experience. And until you get to that position, only you can really figure out how you'll deal with it. So I think it's a really great point that you make. It really is.
Yeah, and I think for like the freelancers listening, like everybody involved in the 100K freelancer club, like looking to develop themselves as a freelancer, like you're already taking the first steps, and I know that you will be a successful freelancer because you're putting the time and effort in to research and improve and adapt. So I have no doubt in my mind that, you know, you're going to progress into a high paid freelancer, but that main roadblock for you is going to be what we just talked about there. And so swinging back to like the Upwork report, the second or the next in the list is customer service skills. And a lot of people come to us and they ask, and this surprised me when we first started, you know, like the Instagram page and the podcast, and we started taking questions from freelancers out there. There's a lot of people that ask us, how do I get started freelancing online? I don't even have a laptop. And they're just working from a phone or whatever device it may be. And I think this is where a lot of this comes from, is the customer service side of things. Because you can offer here, I'll just run you through this list right now. You've got customer service, customer support, email communication, phone support, email support, communication etiquette, online chat support, answering product questions, data entry, and administrative support. And I think if you're a freelancer, or like you want to start making money online, and you're in the position where you just, you know, you haven't trained in any specific skill, you haven't got anything that like interests you, you can literally jump on Upwork and put in the skill, which is number 8 on this list. So it's obviously high up, answering product questions. And you could literally run that from your phone. Like, it's something that you could get started with instantly. Now, this is something I do not, anything in these customer, well, this is I don't want to offend anybody here, but anything in the customer service list on Upwork, okay, it's popular and it's a very good way to get started, but I really do not advise that you put all of your eggs into this basket and try and progress this as a career, because I think
Absolutely.
that the wage
It's not a career,
like
is it?
ceiling on
It's
that
not.
is just nothing. Like
I don't want to speak out of turn here, and like you said, don't want to offend anyone, but I'll always be transparent on this show. I've always said that from day one, and the whole point is that not everyone is going to take this advice and agree with what we say. That's the whole point. That's kind of how debate works. It's not a career for me. It's a great little side hustle, I think. You know, if you're looking for some extra cash and you've got a bit of time to spare, and maybe you want to go down the route of answering customer service related queries, or, you know, product questions and all of those things that you just mentioned. Great little way to earn a few extra quid on the side. I guess that technically is kind of freelancing, but in terms of a career, could you make a career out of doing that? I'm not sure you could. And even if you did, you're thinking about freelancing, the reason that we are freelancers is because we have the opportunity to work our own hours and do all these things that we've mentioned a number of times on the podcast, and something we've mentioned on the 100k freelancer club loads of times, which is a case of being your own boss and doing what you want to do for a living. That's kind of why a lot of people are freelancers. That's what motivates them. Does answering customer service questions on your phone motivate you? If the answer is yes, then I'll humbly apologize to you. But in terms of making that into a
But
sustainable career, I'm not so sure that
I
that
think the
pathway
biggest thing on
exists just
that
yet.
is that the biggest thing, freelancer in the freedom comes from the money you earn. Like, some freelancers work 6 hours a week and they live the rest of their life on a beach in Miami, but that's because they can earn enough money in that 6 hours to pay for the rest of the week. Like, I don't think with, email support and product questions, like we were saying then, it's going to enable you to live that like amazing lifestyle that, we ourselves kind of advertise as well. So I would think those are, for the people that always ask us, how do I get started with absolutely nothing? That's a good place to start, but never like aim to progress down that as a career path. And then the next one is one under my skill set as well. It's the top 10 most in demand marketing skills. So these are wildly popular online services at the moment. So every business, well, pretty much every business is looking for these services. So there's thousands of posts per day looking for people in. Now, number 1, social media marketing. 2, lead generation. 3, Facebook. 4, search engine optimization. 5, business-to-business marketing. 6, Instagram. 7, marketing strategy. 8, social media management. 9, email marketing. And 10, market research. Now, these are all skills that you will, if you did like a marketing degree or any form of like marketing course or just throughout school, like you'll have something, you'll have a basic skill level on this. Like yourself now, like you're not a social media marketing expert, but with your experience on Twitter in marketing yourself and what you've been exposed to, I'm pretty sure if you went on Upwork right now and applied for some social media marketing roles and just put the experiences that you have with Twitter, you could start landing yourself very small freelance gigs and work yourself up from there. And that's what I'd recommend to some people trying to get started is, it doesn't have to be, the work on your portfolio doesn't have to be commercial work. It doesn't have to be for, paying clients. It could be anything. So
Yep.
like you said, like you've got a personal Twitter account that you've raised to, a couple thousand followers. You get really good interaction, which is exactly what brands want, like you've got that already, what brands are searching for. So if you can advertise that correctly, you can go ahead and start progressing like in that field. This is the number 1 skill in marketing in Upwork. So essentially it's probably the number 1 freelancing skill in the world right now.
Yeah, it's a great point. Social media is huge. It will continue to be huge, especially the last 3 or 4 years. It's just grown exponentially to the point where I'm seeing so many jobs now pop up for social media marketing manager, just a general social media manager. Some of the organizations that are my clients have got dedicated sort of employees for specific social media brands rather than an umbrella role. There's dedicated TikTok producers and things like that. Even some of the bigger organizations that I deal with have got TikTok producers for certain countries. So, this is how niche we're getting with social media, because there are different audiences and targets that these companies are trying to strike. So I definitely think that is something that you raised that's a great point. And even for me, I feel sometimes the trends are moving too quick for me to keep up with. And I've tried to make a point this year of taking more photos and documenting my work a little bit more than I have been doing to try and build my profile a little bit more. A few years ago, I would say that I was in a pretty healthy and strong place when it comes to Twitter in particular. Maybe I've taken my eye off the ball a little bit when it comes to that, but that kind of comes as a byproduct of being quite busy. So keeping on top of your social media accounts and marketing yourself like that is a great point. And the fact that you don't have to have experience commercially, like you say, to do that, I think is an excellent point, because we've always said when it comes to kind of marketing yourself as a freelancer, we've used this example numerous times, and we'll continue to do so because I think it's personally the best one. It's if you've got a portfolio or a website, which a lot of you will do, and on the 100K Freelancer Club website, you can find out our sort of recommended websites for that. We've also got a post on our Instagram page, I believe, as well, which highlights our recommended platforms for kind of self-marketing and portfolios and things like that. I personally use Adobe Portfolio because it's part of the Creative Cloud, so that's what works best for me. But I think it's important that if you don't have a great deal of experience, you can always create ideas in your head and upload them to a portfolio. So, for instance, if you're a freelance graphic designer, you don't need to have a testimony or, anything from a client that you've worked for to post on your website. Because if you've only worked for one or two clients and you think, well, my website's not going to be any good because it's only got two things on there, you don't have to have everything from a client. You can put projects that you've worked on yourself, things that you've thought up, things that you've imagined. Say you wanted to graphic design an advert or a cartoon character or something like that. If that's your kind of bag, you can do whatever you want. Like you say, you can market yourself, and the more skills you can show off, the better chance you have of being hired. And so, when it comes to this sort of thing, I think particularly with social media, it's a great tool to use and to have, to be able to kind of show people exactly what you can do. So it comes as no surprise to me that social media is on that list. I think that we might even see it. It's pretty high up at the moment. We might even see it sort of overtake at some point in the next 5 years. We might even see some sort of social marketing roles on Upwork overtake the web development side of things. Maybe you disagree because your background is in web development, but I think from the trends that we've seen and the way new platforms are emerging, I mean, before TikTok, it was Vine, and any old codgers like me and you will remember Vine from about 10 years ago.
Man, I love that
But
site.
it was so good, but it closed down, didn't it? Vine closed
Yeah.
down. I mean, we've seen so many social media sites come and go, JB. We've seen Bebo, that crashed and burned. We've seen MySpace, that was the OG, that crashed and burned. Facebook's still ticking along, but it seems to be more older people using that now. And younger people tend to use things like Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok. And so TikTok, for me, I think that's only about 3 or 4 years old. And it's an absolutely huge social media site now. So I think you can just kind of take that as a small snippet of what the future may hold for social media. So, like I say, web development, as we've already discussed on the podcast, is top at the moment. But I think that we could see in the future months and years social media roles really taking an upward trajectory and an upward trend. So definitely
Yeah.
feel like
I
people
think
shouldn't
it,
be scared of being able to show what they can do on social media because it's a great skill to have.
yeah, I think it also comes down to like the barrier to entry. So for example, to get a role in social media marketing, it's not unheard of that companies employ 15-year-olds to manage their
Absolutely.
Instagram because they're like
Absolutely.
really connected to it. Like
They're
I
on the
bet
ball.
exactly. I bet if you go to a load of small companies around England, like they're hiring like their nephew, their niece, something like that, because that, like you just said there, they're on the ball. They know the trends. They can keep the company connected with the market. But in terms of like how it progresses on Upwork is kind of with web development. There's a barrier to entry. Like you couldn't just jump into web development. It would actually take you quite a decent amount of time to actually, get a decent understanding of programming. Get an expertise in a programming language, or become a front end developer, back end developer, full stack developer, whatever. Like it's not like social media marketing where it's just something. I see 6-year-olds with an iPhone nowadays that probably have Instagram and all this sort of stuff. So that it's just ingrained into them. So they can just, they could open a profile whenever they're old enough to do so on Upwork and just start going for it. Whereas with the web development and the text things, you kind of have to learn it.
Great example, great point. Totally agree with that. It's much easier to log on to social media websites, and I think there are flaws in this because we see far too much anonymous abuse and the ability for people to be quite despicable online behind the veil of anonymity, which really winds me up no end. When you see people sending horrible messages that have no place on any public forum, and yet they can get away with it because they've got a burner account and there's no accountability held.
Burner account, yeah.
There's no accountability held to any of the accounts. There's people that don't need to show ID or anything to set up an account, and they can use it to be quite malicious. So I think there are flaws to it, but like you say, all social media sites near enough are free to use. they're pretty much simple to use, and they're easy to understand. And it's something that, like, the key word is social. Everyone's using it and everyone knows of it. Not everyone is a web developer, and it takes
Yeah.
time and it takes a lot of effort to learn. Mind you, that being said, to be good at social media is interesting, because I think it comes down to um, uh, understanding algorithms and things like that. That's kind of a
Well,
slightly
this is a
technical side of thing.
conversation I have with a lot of freelancers, is that,
Mhm.
this obviously number one skill right now in the marketing on Upwork, social media marketing. So it's just created a massive demand for social media marketing. So there's so many people on Upwork and so many people around the world, so many freelancers that freelance in social media marketing. So because there's so many people, there's also so many people that suck. Like, anybody can do it. Like, to log to log into an Instagram account and send a post, to create an account on Canva for free, Instagram account for free, make a post, send it. Like, companies are clueless and they think, I just need to be on Instagram. Let's just get someone to do it, pay them a few quid an hour, and they just do it. And what happens is this kind of like, where's the whole supply and demand, where there's just massive supply of these social media managers. Obviously, there's a lot of jobs as well, but because there's so much supply, the hourly rate is just rock bottom. Like, I bet if the average is probably like $12 an hour or less on Upwork for social media management, but on the
But let's not
other,
throw figures around. We don't know for certain.
yeah,
but
no, we
can,
don't.
we
That
can
that
take
is
a
just
good guess.
a random. Yeah, maybe it's more than that, but I think it's low compared to other top things. So, for example, like JavaScript developer, top in the tech, the average on that is probably way higher than social media manager.
Sure.
But
Because it's more
what
of
I'm
a
trying
skill.
to
It's
get at,
exactly what you said. It's more of a skill to do that. than it
exactly,
is.
but
Yeah.
what I've found is that because there's so many people that, not to be offensive, that suck at social media management but do it because there's so many like jobs and availability for it, and businesses are kind of clueless to what's good and what's not, that if you can stand out and become very good at your job, very specialized at social media marketing, and you get results and you have fantastic results on your portfolio, because there's so much trash, if you stand out, you can charge wild amounts of money. Like,
100%.
I know social media managers that are charging like $500 an hour just for consultation, because these companies know that that they are going to get the job done. They're guaranteeing
But
by paying that rate to that person that they are the best.
and I completely concur with what you're saying. But I think a lot of it is being on trend. Now, being a broadcaster like myself, you kind of learn the skills and you get better and you adapt as you go along. With social media, if you don't keep your finger on the pulse, like what I was saying earlier on about my own Twitter account, I kind of feel like I've taken the eye off the ball there a little bit. You get left behind. People will
Yeah.
unfollow you, and you will get left behind. And what your techniques and your plans of how to gain followers and gain traction and interactions, all of those things that used to work for you even 6 months ago might not work for you
I
now.
mean, it's
And
ruthless and relentless.
it's very ruthless. And even things like, we talk about the age side of things, young people, as in very young people, sometimes under the age of 18, being hired to do these jobs. For me, I'm not on TikTok because firstly, I don't want to be. And secondly,
Well,
it's
you're
just
not
it's just
miming
not.
songs.
I don't think it's quite targeted at me. I don't feel compelled to be on it. And I guess that's the point. The point is TikTok is not aimed for people in their mid to late 20s. It's not what it's aimed for. In my opinion. But there are loads of people that I know, friends, that are all on TikTok, and I get sent TikToks all the time in many different WhatsApp group chats by people that are far older than me. So I think it's important to underline the fact that the key word is social, and it's so easy to be left behind. Now I'm starting to think now, the longer I'm not on TikTok, what am I missing out on? Because everyone's talking about all of these different things that's going on, and then that's when people feel compelled to jump online and do it. Whereas at the moment, even though you've said that web design is top of the list of Upwork skills for this year or for last year, 2021, it's not making me want to sit down and take a quick course in how to be a web developer and how to learn JavaScript.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key thing to distinguish there. So you're absolutely right. To be very good, I mean, it's like anything at an elite level. I mean, I always use football on this podcast. I need to stop really, but it's just all I know really when it comes to freelancing is to be a professional
Upwork
sports
skills.
person, let's just say, you need to be exceptionally good and a
Yeah.
little bit lucky at what you do. And then your reward is you get paid the big money. It would be similar to social media. Now, to be a footballer, it's the most popular sport, team sport in the world, football. And so therefore to be good at that, you need to be better than me, than you, than so many other people. You need to be better at the game than them. And social media is an extremely competitive environment in that respect. So to be good at social media is probably why these people you're talking about that are charging $500 an hour as a consultancy fee, let alone the other fees that they might charge for other stuff. So I think that the reason that that is the case is because it's harder to do that. And that's not to say being a social media guru is harder than being a web designer or a web developer, because I don't think that's true. And I think that's a different conversation. It's like saying, is a heart surgeon more skilled than a footballer? Well, at heart surgery, yes, they are.
That's a big
At,
debate.
at heart surgery, yes, they are. At football, no, they're not. So
Yeah.
everyone's good at what their skill is, and I'm not really 100% sure of the point I'm trying to make here, but I suppose you kind of get where I'm coming from. That to be good at a skill that's that popular, because everyone's got social media, but to be good at it is a tough thing to do. So I think that's worth bearing in mind before, as you say, before you just jump on and log on to Upwork and set up a profile and expect to get paid a load of money to send a few tweets out, because it's probably not quite as simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you are expecting to do that, like jump on, send a few tweets out, get a bit of cash in the bank, bit of beef goulash, then you should be. I said
Where's
that,
that come from?
but you just I gotta kill myself there. You should just be expecting, like, what you put in is what you get out. So if you're just gonna be, hold on. If you're just going to be
need to calm
joshing
down.
around, yeah, I need to calm down. It's a sugar high. If you're just going to be joshing around and sending a few tweets out, you're going to be getting like a wage that represents that, like $10 an hour, for example. But if you're going to be there, sat down, analyzing, putting hundreds of hours of work into why you're making these tweets, what's on trend, what's the the analytics, what's the purpose behind this, the call to action, everything. And you're going to fly past the rest of the competition. You're going to be doing, amazing things. But like you said there, like you don't want to be just doing, that. And I think I'll just transition now into closing off the podcast into one final conversation. It's just that what do you think? We've covered in today's podcast the top skills of 2021. So these are what Upwork have published to say that were the most in-demand skills last year. Obviously, we just transitioned into a new year now, and what do we see for the future? But what do you think is going to be the top skills for 2022 and beyond?
I have far less experience in this than you do, and I'll be honest, I'm still trying to understand it. I think cryptocurrency and crypto in general, I think that will be the next big thing. Obviously, we know about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other kind of cryptocurrencies are starting to take off. We've seen NFTs, which non-fungible tokens, which I still think is a terrible name, by the way. Non-fungible token. I mean, fungible sounds like mushroom. It sounds like fungi, doesn't it? Fungus. But yeah, NFTs. I'm sure most people listening are aware of NFTs, but if you're not, non-fungible tokens, they're almost like digital collector's items, aren't they? Really, and they're stored on a blockchain, which is a secure kind of database online. Just to kind of summarize very, very quickly what they are.
Yeah, I'm not going to dive into this. We'll be talking for the next 6 years. Yeah, we'll have a
Yeah,
fat argument on it. Yeah.
I'm sure I've missed a few key points out. But, NFT, non-fungible token, was the Oxford English Dictionary's 2021 word of the year. I'm right in thinking, I'm pretty sure it was. So that just goes to show kind of where it stands in terms of its relevance at the moment. I actually had a debate with a couple of people this morning in one of the offices I was in this morning about NFTs and their value and where their place is in society at the moment.
It seems to be a daily debate right now.
It seems to be a daily debate right now, and whether you think that they're a good idea or a bad idea, there's no doubt people are talking about them. And as we've seen many, many times in business, good ideas come and go, bad ideas come and go all the time. You see the next best thing, and all of a sudden it's gone down the drain a few months later. So I think that's an important thing to bear in mind. I'm not going to say that's going to happen with NFTs, but I think especially with cryptocurrency, we've seen Bitcoin kind of be the chief cryptocurrency. So many different cryptocurrencies popping up at the moment. I don't know a great deal about them, but much like what we've mentioned about how people are looking for WordPress experts and web development experts and JavaScript experts and all of these things, and people that are good with APIs and all of this sort of stuff. I think that we will see in the next, I mean, I'm not sure whether that will be a top skill in 2022, but maybe by 23, 24, 24, 25, we might see a real demand for people who are experts in cryptocurrency, not in terms of trading and trying to make money off them that way, but certainly in how they work as a digital
The
asset
development
and
side, building companies around it.
precisely, yeah. I mean, even e-commerce, as you've mentioned, is on the list. Now, the majority of online shops won't accept cryptocurrency at the moment. I mean, I'm
No.
right in thinking that. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
any stores that accept
Yeah.
crypto.
I
Well,
couldn't
there's
go
a,
on to,
a few.
I couldn't go on to, I don't know, let's just say, could I go onto Amazon and use Bitcoin, for example? Maybe that's a
No.
bad example because they're a huge company. Maybe they do. But, for instance, my small local independent brewery, and I want to buy a 6 pack of beer or a 12 pack of beer from them and get it delivered to my front door. Could I pay for that in Ethereum? No, I couldn't. So maybe actually e-commerce and cryptocurrency around that might be the way to go. We are edging closer and closer towards a cashless society. Personally, I think that is what I've noticed. I use Apple Pay a lot. I very rarely use cash nowadays. And most places now, even places that used to be cash only, are now very much accepting card payments. I think a lot of that is to do with coronavirus and the pandemic that we've been in, to do with health and safety and hygiene and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
that would be my prediction, my plump, just kind of from what I've managed to pick up on in the digital world in particular. I think that cryptocurrency and NFTs and those sorts of things, I think skill sets that revolve around those things, I think they will be the in-demand skills for the next maybe 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, and I think what you're picking up on there as well is something that I believe in as well, is the next in-demand skills. Is sort of, if you've heard the term thrown around, Web 3.0. So anything to do with Web 3.0, the metaverse, like this sort of next stage. And I wouldn't want anybody to dive, unless you do strongly believe that is up next, dive too deeply and put their, all their eggs into one basket. But just being aware of how this can shape the job market in the future. For example, what type of clients might pop up? How can I amend my services? How can I pivot my freelance services to accommodate for more blockchain clients, to accommodate for people searching for more NFT-based work? I think those are the sort of skills that you can start to develop now, and as the market develops, you develop with them. It's not like if you're, what we were talking about earlier, you've just entered the freelance market, you're in, customer service or, basic graphic design or something like that. You can be working on that and your, end game career could be a blockchain developer. And you've got the time right now while the market is still developing to develop with it, because there aren't absolute experts yet. I mean, there's the people that created Bitcoin and Ethereum and stuff like that, but because the market is so new, nobody's got 8 years worth of experience in Ethereum, because people have only really been using it for a year or two. So you've got a really good chance of standing out and getting started and standing out in the future in these emerging markets. So I'm just going to jump on over to what Upwork thought that the up and coming skills are. So they've got as number one is cloud computing, which obviously I would say, I strongly agree that cloud computing is going to be there. It's not one of these things like NFT where it could explode or it could drop off a cliff. It is fully integrated into everyone's life, and it is a service that will not go away, is cloud computing. So if you can learn skills around cloud computing, that would be awesome. The second they've got in there is blockchain, which we just covered then. The third is AI, which again, there's a lot of stuff moving towards that at the moment. I think, in terms of being an actual developer in AI, you've probably got to be an extremely smart dude. And you're going to have to dedicate a hell of a lot of time to that. which, hats off to you if you can do that. But yeah, go into that, and it's probably a very, very, very highly paid field as well. But just thinking about how AI can be applied to other jobs as well, like, how is it going to affect e-commerce? How is it going to affect social media marketing? Like, how can you...
We're already seeing that, I think. People think of AI as kind of androids and robot human beings walking around and picking can of beans off the shelf. I mean, that's not the AI that I think these things are referring to. I think Alexa, that's AI. Sorry if I've set off everyone who's listening to this podcast, Alexa's, by saying that. But yeah, Alexa, Siri, Bixby, Hey Google, or whatever it is on Google. All of these things are artificial intelligence. Voice controlled artificial intelligence is something I've got a little bit of experience in. Nowadays, on your Sky remote, if you've got Sky TV here in the UK, you can press the side and voice control is in that. That's all artificial intelligence. All of these things are AI, and they're just small things I picked up on, like the smart speaker element. I'm sure there's loads of different basic day-to-day elements that I'm completely missing out in this, but yeah, it's a big part of our day-to-day life already, and that's only going to increase. Whether that's people becoming a little bit too lazy, like Alexa, dim the lights or whatever. It's just convenience, and it's ease of access, and just joking aside about the whole lazy thing, it's something that's going to play a big part, I think, in our lives in the very near future, AI. So yeah, I can definitely see why that's on the list.
Yeah, true. I'm gonna disagree with you there and say that those things that you mentioned there are not AI. It's the Internet of Things that you're talking about there. But I don't want to get into this debate right now because we'll be talking.
The Internet of Things.
Yeah. So
What's
the Internet of Things is basically where the internet is integrated into your everyday life objects. So for example, your speaker, so your lights, you can tell the lights to dim. So is anything that, like, any object that has been like infused with the internet for usability or for design purposes. AI is more and I don't think that there is any true AI at the moment, but artificial intelligence is essentially like a sentient computer, or a computer capable of making decisions. So
yeah, I mean, okay. Another example would be something that I've got a little bit of experience with is now you see billboards that have facial recognition, bus stops that have facial recognition, and so they can see what sort of person is looking at the advert, or they can see what sort of person is looking at the billboard. They scan their face and they'll figure out that it's someone who's over the age of 50. And they might show them an advert for erectile dysfunction pills or something like that. Do you know what I'm saying? Then they might show an advert for someone who's under the age of 20 who is waiting at the bus stop. They might show them an advert for KFC or a fast food chain or something. Is that artificial intelligence as well?
Well, it depends how the robot came to that decision. Like, it depends.
By looking at the person's face. By scanning the person's face and figuring out what their features are, they can figure out whether they're male or female, what sort of age they are roughly, and then they can show them an advert tailored to.
Then yeah, I would say yes, because it's going to make the decision of what advert to show them is going to be based off of data that robot has collected and decided which advert to put out. So I would say yes. I don't know what all the more tech savvy people than me would say to that.
I can't believe we're arguing about AI. It's definitely time to finish this podcast now. I can tell you, I know nothing about AI.
Yeah, we're going on to a bit of a tangent here. So I will say, in the 100k Freelance Club course, we do talk about the thing that we know, and that's freelancing. Okay, so head over to AI. Definitely not AI. I can promise you, there's no AI in there. So head over to 100kfreelancerclub.com. You can actually now get 7 days free access to our pro membership, so you can access all of our past masterclasses, our online courses, both video and audio. So there's everything you need from amazing freelancers from around the world to become a successful freelancer. So www.100kfreelancerclub.com. And thanks again for listening, and it would really help us out if you could subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube, or subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to this podcast. You can also drop us a review over on Apple Podcasts as well, which we'd really appreciate. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening today, and yeah, thanks again, Niall. And
Thank you, JB.